Hey there, Twins fans. Welcome to Twins in the 2000s, a journey through the contemporary history of the Minnesota Twins, brought to you by myself, Nick Nelson of TwinsDaily.com, and my friend here, John Bonus, Johnny Bravo of TwinsDaily.com.
Cheers,
John,
Nick.
enjoying yourself a nice brewski this evening?
Yeah, we got a little Tin Whiskers this time. Tin Whiskers Tiramisu Black Lager.
Ooh,
Tin
yum.
Whiskers in St. Paul.
I'm having a surly myself, and it is tasty.
Nicely
So
done.
we are here today to talk about the 2002 Twins season, a very exciting season, packed full of stuff that happened, tons of excitement. So we're just going to dive right in. Um, when we left off in 2001, it was a fun season, but ultimately a disappointing season. The Twins looked like they were ready to turn the corner, but they crashed in the second half. They went from 5 games ahead in the division at the All-Star break to 6 games out at season's end. This was followed by Tom Kelly, their longtime manager, resigning unexpectedly. Then there was the whole contraction fiasco, which we covered in our last episode. But when all was said and done, on opening day 2002, the Twins were still here, led by their new skipper, Ron Gardenhire, former third base coach who was hired to take over the Minnesota Twins. And under Gardenhire, I got to say, this team started battling their tails off to take a Gardenhire catchphrase. They opened the season winning 4 of their first 5 games, cruised through the first half behind a fully realized nucleus. All the guys that came together last year really locked in now. Rick Reed, who was their trade acquisition at the deadline last year, the previous year, becomes basically the veteran leader of the staff. Quite the workhorse. By mid-July, they're ahead in the division by double digits. And this time there would be no drop off, no collapse. They actually had a better record in the second half than in the first half. They finished with 94 wins, 13 and a half games ahead in the division. This was a laugh for John. I don't think that any team got really within even 10 games of them in the second half. Do you remember it as just being never in doubt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember it being a concern. I don't remember there being this was one of the few years where there wasn't really, a big hard charge at the end that they needed to do to overcome things. They got a decent start. Cleveland. I mean, the other story here is that Cleveland faded fast. They not only did they not finish, you know, just a couple games behind, they finished in third place in the AL Central. And it was. I don't want to say it was never in doubt because we'd just been through the year before, and that
It was
was
all in doubt.
it was everything was in doubt. Right? Yeah, right. We didn't even know we'd have a team at the by the time the collective bargaining agreement ended. Well, I mean, it's one of the other things that happened as well is that there was a collective bargaining agreement being negotiated during the season, and at the beginning of the season, even that was causing some questions. Like, could it be possible that the Twins end up having a great year? We get to August 31st and there's a strike again, like there had been in 1994. That fear faded as the rest of the year went on, but that was a very real fear in the beginning of the season too. So yeah, there was plenty of stuff in doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the margin by which they won the division speaks to what a weak division it had become at this point. I mean, winning 94 games, it's not like they won 105, and they still won it by, were clear by 13 and a half games. It was the end of an era for Cleveland and some other teams, uh, in rebuilds or various phases of their contention plans. So the Twins breaking through at just the right time, and they were ready to take over the division, which they would. A division that the AL Central Division came into existence after the strike in 1995. This was the Twins' first time winning it, but it wouldn't be the last. Also, made their first trip to the playoffs since 1991. They lost their first game, and it started out a little disastrously, John. I think 3 errors in the first 2 innings against the Oakland Athletics, who they were facing off with in the ALDS. They dropped that first game, or sorry, they win the first game. Then they
Yeah,
drop two. They drop two and find themselves up against elimination against the A's. Come back to win game four, 11-2, and then a thrilling, dramatic game five clincher in Oakland. The Twins take it late, a very memorable AJ Pierzynski 3-run homer. Um, when you look back at this series, John, this was the Moneyball year. They had won 20 straight games at one point this season. They had that three-headed monster in the rotation Barry Zito, Mark Mulder, Tim Hudson. A very tough opponent, and the Twins might shock people to hear it today, but the Twins really stepped up in this postseason series and got it done.
Yeah, it's one of those things where that whole season felt like such magic. Nothing was going to surprise Twins fans, including beating the A's, which were a really good team at the time. But boy, the first 2 innings of that first game, that is what I remember most about that series. That's such a typically Twins thing to say. I remember how terrible those first 2 innings went. Bright sunny day in Oakland. All across the infield, they made errors. You mentioned the 3 errors that happened in the infield. Those were all done by people in the infield, Minkiewicz and Guzman. I think maybe even Koski also had one of them. And that does not count the pop fly that fell in between all 3 of them and Radke. That one they couldn't call an error on anybody because nobody had touched it. It was just such a disastrous beginning. And give Radke credit because he ended up weathering that, going a few more innings, and eventually credit the Twins that, like they had all season, they just didn't quit. They didn't feel sorry for themselves. They just kind of kept working it and ended up winning that first game. And that might have, it's silly to say, but that might have been the deciding game of that series, that game 1. It was only a 5-game series. It's a big game.
Absolutely, yeah. Taking that first game is critical, and ultimately, the Twins were able to move on to the next level, go on to the American League Championship Series, where they face off against the Anaheim Angels. Pretty darn good Angels team. Here again, the Twins win the first game of the series. They go up 1-0 in the ALCS. Here again, they lose the next 2 to fall behind 1-2 in this best of 7 series. But there was no rebounding or coming back. They lost 2 more in a row, lose the series 4-1 against the Angels. The Angels go on to face Barry Bonds and the Giants in the World Series and defeat them.
Yep.
I wonder how the Twins would have. You look back at this sort of historical what if, and what if the Twins had faced Barry Bonds, and that, that was just a huge series, so much narrative around it with Bonds' career, his greatness at that time. Finally, I believe his first time in the World Series, his first shot at a championship, right? The Angels and their rally monkey were able to take it away from him.
Yeah, I think that might have been also been Scioscia's first year. And it's similar to Gardenhire's first year. And I'm pretty sure Scioscia won the Manager of the Year award that year, beating out Gardenhire. The Angels had a lot of stuff similar to what the Twins had. The difference, I think the difference in that series ended up being, well, a few things. Stupid rally monkey. Just annoyed the snot out of me.
Blame the rally monkey.
I blame the rally monkey. I remember that way too vividly. Adam freaking Kennedy, just going berserk and just having a series for the ages. He turns into David Ortiz and wills the Angels on. But the other thing is that the Twins really survived that 2002 season, or leaned to that 2002 season on their bullpen. And the Twins bullpen ended up coming up. It ran out of gas. I was what I want to say at the end of 2002 season, carried that into the off season a little bit. Whereas the Angels had a bullpen that was good, and then at the end of that season they added K-Rod to it to just be an absolute dominating force through the playoffs. So that, if you're looking for real reasons, real differences that happened, I think like that, in my mind, at least the way I remember it, is that being one of the key points, is that our bullpen ran out of gas eventually, and they deserved to run out of gas. They had absolutely carried that team throughout that whole year. They were. It's unbelievable how big of an impact they were that year. And the Angels, bullpen thrived because they added, an all-star level, a Hall of Fame level closer at like 18 years old.
When he first came up, I just remember the buzz. It was crazy.
Right.
It's kind of interesting to look back now. We're so familiar with the Twins and their incredible historic run of playoff ineptitude, basically since this year that we're talking about right now. But look back, prior to them losing, I don't know, 7 or straight playoff series or whatever it's been since then. Really never getting past the ALDS or even getting more than a win in the ALDS after this. Their 3 previous trips to the postseason before this run, 1987, they won the World Series. 1991, they won the World Series. 2002, they made it to the ALCS and came within 3 games of the World Series. I think that kind of gets forgotten. There is a sort of a pendulum that swung back and forth here, but obviously it's swung way too far in the wrong direction.
Yeah, Grant, I couldn't agree more.
All right. As we proceed with our discussion of the 2002 Minnesota Twins here on Twins in the 2000s, brought to you by Twins Daily, we'll talk about some of the top performers on this 2002 team, and we'll pick our choices for MVP. This year, I think, is a particularly interesting one because it's a lot of really good performances and a lot of interesting ways to look at it. I'll let you lead this one, John, since you wrote the article for the website and you chose the original MVP. I'll let you lead by choosing your MVP of the 2002 Twins.
Yeah, so when I wrote that story last year in 2000, I picked Eddie Guardado, and I'll stick by it. He does not. First of all, he had a great year, and he does show up in plenty. He ended up having, I think, a franchise record in terms of saves at the time. But you have to go back to our 2001 conversation to really recognize how different things were. We had gone 2001, the Twins bullpen had completely fallen apart, especially at the closer role. Then there was contraction, so it's not like they could go and sign and bring in a big arm to anchor the bullpen. And so they entered the 2002 season with that being the primary concern. And on the first week of the opening season, Guardado saved 4 games, including opening day. What that allowed them to do was put Hawkins back in a setup role where he was really effective. There's actually an unsung hero. I'm not sure if we've got a slide for him or not, but J.C. Romero that year was absolutely unbelievable. And really, if we go back to our previous conversation, his falling apart in sort of at the end of the season was one of the reasons why they were not nearly as effective versus the Angels and such as what I remember is not. It was one of the big factors with them not making even a longer run in the postseason than they made. But Guardado had never really been in that closer role before, and you took it by the horns and just did a great job. I was actually surprised when I wrote that story that I looked up his WPA, his win probability added, and I expected to see him leading the team with it. He didn't. He wasn't even one that he was barely in the top 5 of pitchers, relief pitchers, which is unusual for a closer. But and that's because I think by the time he came in, a lot of the time, the game was pretty much salted away. But that's the way it was in 2001 too, and we didn't get those. We ended up with a negative WPA and that stuff. So, Guardado was my pick. But honestly, there were a couple of different players who were absolute superstars. Tory Hunter became a superstar that year.
Yes.
To put him on, I think most people would take a look at his performance and say, or a lot of people would take a look at his performance and say he was the MVP of that team. You can see his numbers on there, 26 home runs or something. This is also the year he had the catch of Barry Bonds' fly ball in the outfield over the wall, as the Twins representative in the All-Star game. And there was the Gold Glove center field. He won the Gold Glove that year. The Gold Glove center field defense, the power, hitting in the middle of the lineup all season. He was the heart and soul of that team. And Corey Koski also, basically you take a look at Koski's numbers, they're just a little bit short of everything that Hunter did. He probably should have won a Gold Glove, but he didn't. Not quite as many home runs, etc. But of course, he was also playing third base. Just another remarkable year, and that carried over from the 2001 season, where he really shined. So, all three of those guys had monster years. But that what was remarkable about that year is that there was no no player that everybody would have said, oh, that's going to be the person that carries that team. That team had performers throughout, up and down the lineup. I think they had I think they had they didn't have they had 7 pitchers or something that had 8 wins or more, right? They had uh, maybe half a dozen guys with at least double-digit home runs. Like, it was just one of those things where up and down the lineup, that was a crazy valuable, a crazy balanced team that admittedly leaned a lot on its bullpen.
Yes, absolutely. A few other performances to call out. You mentioned Guardado, Koski, and Hunter. This well-rounded group had many good performers. AJ Przinsky really stepping forward, hit 300, was an all-star as the starting catcher. Johann Santana. Now, finally, the Twins acquired him in 2000. He was very bad as their Rule 5 pick, a very rough rookie. He comes back with this changeup that he learned in AAA from a guy named Bobby Cuellar. And all of a sudden, he is dominating. 27 appearances, 14 of those starts. Still hadn't, for whatever reason, found his way in a full-time rotation gig. But a 2.99 ERA, 11.4 strikeouts per nine. For a Twins team in that era, 11.4 strikeouts per nine. Whew. I mean, we're talking Joe Mays won 17 games the previous year with a 4.7 K per nine rate. So this was a pitch to contact team under Terry Ryan and their new pitching coach, Rick Anderson. Rick Reed, who I mentioned, the veteran anchor of the rotation, went 15-7 with a 3.78 ERA. A young second-year starter named Kyle Loesch was their second best starter with a 4.23 ERA. He was 23 years old. You talked about the bullpen, just excellent performances throughout. J.C. Romero put up a 1.89 ERA. Eddie Guardado, you said it. I mean, it's not a stat head type of pick to go with a guy who was apparently worth 1.2 wins above replacement, or to go with a relief pitcher at all for an MVP award. But the narrative is undeniable when you looked at what happened last year, the way they totally collapsed, and the way Guardado stepped into this closer role. Everyday Eddie, he was incredibly reliable, 2.93 ERA, converted 45 out of 51 saves. He was a huge fixture at the back end of that bullpen. One other relief performance I have to call out just because it's funny. You remember Tony Fiore?
Oh, I was just going to mention this. Yeah. So you tell me what you're going to tell me, and I'll tell you what I'm going to tell you.
This was the season they called him the Vulture because he would just come in as a reliever. He would throw this palm ball. He had this weird slow pitch that just kept people off balance. He went 10-3 out of the bullpen. 10 wins as a reliever. That's something.
He had the second highest WPA as well, Nick.
Wow. Okay, that shocks me because I thought of him as more of
right. Yeah, the Vulture would make you think, oh, he just kind of happened to be in the right place at the right time. He was coming into key points and saving games and lasting a long time to rack up some of those WPA numbers. And in fact, I'll just call this out when I say, well, one other performer. I'll give you the top 3 WPAs on the offense and on the defense. Top 3 WPAs that year for the hitters. Jock Jones was number 1, which we forget how impactful he was. And in fact, I hope we mentioned this as part of the moments of that year. He ended up having as many leadoff home runs. He almost set a major league record for leadoff home runs in the season that year. Only Brady Anderson beat it.
And we're calling that illegitimate.
Right. Yeah,
that was
right.
The height of the steroids era.
Right. Koski was number 2 in WPA for hitters. And then Bobby Kilty was number 3 for hitters. For all the impact that Tory Hunter had, one of the reasons he didn't get my MVP vote when we talked about this, even though he was the superstar, he actually had a negative WPA that year.
Wow.
He wasn't coming through in the clutch, oddly enough. Okay, but here's the more important part about back to the bullpen. Top 5 win probability. I'll count up from the bottom 5 because Guardado was 5th. Mm-hmm. Johann was 4th. Mm-hmm. LaTroy Hawkins, 3rd. Not too surprising setup man. Fiore, who you said, number 2. And then J.C. Romero was number 1 with a 4.5 WPA.
Wow.
That almost doubled that doubled like Jock Jones and Koski, right? He was just unbelievable as a setup man in that 2002 season. And if you take a look at those 5 guys in the bullpen and you add up those WPAs, that's 13 wins right there, just from those 5 guys in the bullpen, right? Because that's where mostly Johann was, right? Well, they finished. That's the difference between a 94 team a 94 win season and an 81 win season right there. If those guys are average, if they're just average relievers, you're back to an 81 win season, and you're battling the White Sox, who ended up with an 81 win season. So I just can't emphasize enough how much that team leaned on their bullpen in the 2002 season.
It shows in their win-loss records too. I'm not saying this is the most meaningful stat, especially for a reliever, but Tony Fiore, as we mentioned, 10-3. JC Romero had a 9-2 record. LaTroy Hawkins went 6-0. LaTroy Hawkins, we were pretty hard on him in the last episode, so we really got to give him his due. What an incredibly resilient rebound he had moving into that setup role. A 2.13 ERA, pitched 80 innings. As I mentioned, a 6-0 record. One of the most positive impact players in that bullpen, as you mentioned. So a great rebound for LaTroy Hawkins, and he would have several years in that setup role as one of the league's better guys in that role. So you're going Eddie Guardado. I think there's a good case to be made for it, just on that pure narrative of what he sort of symbolized for the bullpen and what he really did in that closer role, being so reliable. I think for my choice, I'm going to go with Tory Hunter. That the win probability added is interesting, although I will say that does not account for defense at all. And
no, you're right. Absolutely right.
At this point, he won his second consecutive Gold Glove this year. One of the best defenders in center field, once again helping that pitching staff a ton. He was an all-star. You mentioned the big moment in the all-star game, which we'll dig into a little more in the next segment. It just felt like he was really, out of all these guys, all this balanced team, a lot of sort of quiet, unassuming guys. Tory Hunter was emerging as the face of the franchise, really charismatic, big personality, big smile, and a huge performer. A star defensive center fielder, hitting 30 home runs, staying healthy, being out there every day. A huge boon for this team. So I'm going to go with Tory. We're going to go with Tory and Guardado, which is funny. Neither of us went with Corey Koski was the Fangraphs wins above replacement leader. Right. Jock Jones was the Baseball Reference wins above replacement leader. Neither of us going with them. We're going with maybe a little more narrative-driven picks on this one. Yep. All right. So as we wrap up our conversation of the 2002 Minnesota Twins season, we're going to talk about some of the most memorable moments and milestones of this season. Here's one that John referenced. Well, actually, skipping ahead here. Another one that John referenced. April 1st, 2002 at KC, the shot heard around the baseball world. Jock Jones, in the first at-bat of the season, in signature form, launches a home run into left field. It was a message. It was a statement being sent after all this contraction.
It was stuff. A big middle finger.
So
is what it was.
It was an FU. We are not going anywhere.
Yeah, it felt like that. I got to tell you, after an off season full of angst, right? Angst and depression and legal battles, and are they really just going to fold a team and just take it away and crumple it, throw it away? That felt like a statement that we are here and we're going to play this season, and we went nuts. I remember going nuts.
And it set the tone for the season. It set the tone for Jock Jones' season. As you mentioned,
right?
Jock Jones, second most leadoff home runs of all time in 2002. I believe he hit 11, second only to Brady Anderson, who hit 12 in that random crazy year when he hit 50 home runs. Another memorable moment of the early part of the 2002 season, June 4th, 2002, the Twins are playing at home against Cleveland. They set a franchise record for the biggest blowout, biggest margin of victory in their history, which I believe still stands today, a 23-2 laugher. 4 different players notch 4 hits. Jock Jones and Luis Rivas drive in 5 apiece. This game, if you want to just encapsulate in one game the transition of power in the AL Central, this pretty much sums it up. I mean, Cleveland came back and absolutely demoralized the Twins in the second half of the year before by erasing that division lead. This year, the Twins had Cleveland's number, and I think this game exemplifies that perfectly.
Yeah, by the time that game had started, the Twins were doing pretty well in the division. They were up 4 or 5 games over second place, and I don't even remember if second place was Cleveland or not at that point. that switch had started to happen in April. They faced off against Cleveland in April in a big game. In fact, I think originally they had been swept by Cleveland even earlier in the season, early in April. So then it was kind of a, oh no, here we go again kind of thing, especially after the year's previous collapse. But they won a game in mid-April versus Cleveland, and they won it convincingly. And I think it was against CC Sabathia on the mound. And so, at that point, the whole maybe some of the mystique of Cleveland had faded. I mean, Cleveland had dominated baseball for a decade, certainly the AL Central since the strike. This was this was the icing on the cake. This was the final sort of you're not coming back this time statement game. And it was in a year full of sort of what seemed like a number of magical moments. That was one of those that made you feel like, this is just going to be a different year. This is going to be a different year for this team.
Yeah, they did not need Eddie Guardado in this one.
No.
All-Star break. At the All-Star game, Guardado was one of the Twins' 3 representatives for a second straight year, sending 3 players to the All-Star game. One of the classic moments of recent Twins history, I think, and really epitomizing Tory Hunter's greatness in center field. Barry Bonds, as we mentioned, at the height of his prowess, having one of his big years, just a superstar of the game, a legend, icon of the game. It looked like he was going to have his big moment on the All-Star game stage. I believe this was in Milwaukee, I want to say. He launches a home run into right center field. Tory Hunter, who is the starting center fielder, tracks it down, leaps up, reaches over the wall next to Ichiro, and pulls it back.
Yeah.
Jogs into the infield. It's the 3rd out, and we've got the picture on screen here for those watching. Barry Bonds lifts him up with the big grin over his shoulder. We've got Alex Rodriguez, the new Timberwolves owner, there smiling in the background. This is quite a photo, I think.
That's a good photo, yeah.
This was even for those that don't really care that much about the All-Star game, what a magical, incredible moment to take place.
Yeah, I mean, it was you got Ichiro, who is by himself a superstar at that point, watching Hunter pull that one back over there, and they're jogging in with smiles on their faces and kind of chatting about it. And the way Hunter can be when he's feeling it a little bit. He can be as jovial and endearing as any person on earth. And to see Bonds come up there, and the TV cuts away, and suddenly like, oh, hold it, something's going on over here. Bonds is carrying Hunter, and they're laughing, and it was fantastic. So
it was, for one of the old Hall of Fame, well, not Hall of Fame, but one of the greatest baseball players of all time, certainly quite, far into his career at that point. Tory Hunter is just entering his career. Just a really cool moment of recognition. That was cool to see. I also
leave it to Hunter to make one of the guys who was known as one of the serious or less endearing players, to make him feel like a human being and make him approachable and beloved. Only Hunter had that effect on people, even if they were on the opposing team.
Very true. September of 2002, ESPN, the magazine, publishes an issue with a bunch of Twins on the cover: Hunter, Jack Jones, Brzezinski, Doug Minkiewicz, with the title "The Team That Saved Baseball." A really cool moment of recognition, and really just sort of summarizing everything that we've talked about for the past year leading up to this, all the turbulence, all the existential struggles that this franchise was facing. A phenomenal team that runs away with the division and really captures the hearts of a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and not a lot of superstars, not a lot of highly regarded prospects on the team. I also just call out the timing of that particular issue in 2 ways. The first is, Sports Illustrated had that cover back in April of 2020 or 2021 saying, is this team for real? Can they hang on? Well, no. They waited till September before the Twins were comfortably going to win the AL Central. Yeah, before they tried to jinx us. And then the second one was that that was also right after the CBA had been completed. Right.
Yes.
There that angst that remained from 1994, and followed baseball right up through the home run race of McGwire and Sosa and such, that finally kind of got healed by that and the Cal Ripken Jr. and everything else. We didn't know if that was going to happen again in 2001. Were we going to lose another postseason? What was going to happen? So when they said, the team that saved baseball, they weren't just talking about saving themselves and saving their franchise. They're also talking about, just kind of getting everybody to just pull their heads out of their asses and and concentrate on playing baseball and less about all the crap the ugliness and crap that was off the field.
Absolutely. September 6th, 2002. I thought this was kind of fun. You might remember this if you saw the movie Moneyball. One of the big moments of that, one of the proving points of Billy Beane's success was when the Athletics went on that incredible 20-game winning streak, which baseball teams do not win 20 games in a row. That was wild. The Twins, who were the bane of the Athletics' existence this year, apparently, were the team to end that streak. 6-0 victory at the Metrodome. I remember being at that game. I remember the chant, "Streak is over." It was a lot of fun. Do you remember the buzz around the A's that year, the Moneyball A's, and that incredible winning streak?
Yeah, well, I mean, the A's, Billy Beane had made a couple of trades, including the Giambi trade and so on mid-year. That even Saber. I mean, I think It'd be interesting to go take a look at some of the baseball prospectus stories and such that were being written about the A's that year, because the trades that he made in the middle of that season were not viewed kindly by sabermetricians in general. And then soon afterwards, some of those players ended up being some of the keys for some of their, went on some crazy hot streaks and everything went right. And yeah, there was a lot of excitement about the A's. They also had a monkey on their back going into that postseason because they had lost. I think was it the previous year that they'd lost to the Yankees, where Jeter had done the little flip. Yeah, it was because Giambi was still on the team, right?
Yep.
That they were still being beat up for not having postseason success, as if that was there was some missing ingredient in sabermetrics that would do that, and so they had some questions about them. That 20-game streak really got people excited about them.
Well, maybe there was a missing ingredient, because exactly 1 month after the Twins snapped that 20-game winning streak, they ended the A's season. A.J. Przinsky with a dramatic late-game 3-run homer to help lift the Twins over Oakland in a dramatic 5-4 Game 5 ALDS victory. They needed all 3 of those runs, because I'm pretty sure that home run put them up by 2. Guardado gave up a run in the bottom half to bring it within 1. It was about as tight and dramatic as a finish as you could have, but the Twins were able to squeak it out.
Yeah, I'm having trouble remembering the details. I thought it was a 2-run home run, and then Ortiz put them up by 4, and then 3 came back, but I'm having trouble remembering exactly what it was. Here's what I remember. The bullpen that we were talking about in the first segment was already starting to leak, as they entered into the postseason. And while it was a great win and it was a great playoff victory, and you felt more and more like this was a team of destiny, it was perhaps a precursor to what was going to happen in the next series.
Okay, yes, you're correct. I have looked into it. It was a 2-run homer by Przinsky. Then David Ortiz hit a double that scored 1 run. The Twins were up at that point by 4 runs.
Right.
Eddie Guardado gave up a 3-run homer. So yes, the general details were right. But yeah, it was very tight. It was very sweat-inducing. But the Twins managed to squeak it out. The last, not to spoil anything for the rest of the series, but unfortunately the last playoff series that they would win up until present day. Because
you put that stupid monkey on there just for me, didn't you?
Just to piss you off, yeah. The Twins were eliminated in what will forever be known as the Adam Kennedy game. The Angels' light-hitting second baseman randomly hits 3 home runs to lift the Angels over the Twins. And then another ignominious moment in Twins history came a couple months later. December 16th, 2002, the Twins release designated hitter David Ortiz. Did not want to administration, despite the fact that Ortiz had quite a good year as their DH. He slugged .500. He had 20 home runs. The Twins just wanted to move on. Different at the DH spot or at first base. As we are now getting ready to induct Ortiz into the Major League Hall of Fame, probably not the best decision.
Well, Terry Ryan has said, "Boy, we blew that one." But I will, say this. You can take a look at his numbers. His numbers look pretty good. He did not get a major league deal with any team when they waived him, and they went into those winter meetings talking about trading him. Found no takers, waived him, and he not only did he not get a major league deal with any teams, he went into that Red Sox spring training camp behind 3 or 4 other guys. He was like the 4th first baseman on that team. People did not think he was going to make that team. I think it was behind Jeremy Giambi, to be honest with you. Hindsight is absolutely 2020, and it absolutely kills us. But let's not pretend everybody knew that it was a mistake at the time. Nobody knew except maybe David Ortiz.
Very fair of you, John. Very fair and balanced. What are you going to pick as your most memorable, impactful, significant moment of the 2002 Twins season?
Well, let's go with Jack Jones' leadoff home run. I do remember that as being sort of a, there was still so much worried going on there. And, I don't know that necessarily changed at the time, but looking back, that was certainly one of those moments that you went, all right, we got, at the very least, we've got baseball for one more year. Let's see how it goes.
Love it. I'm going to go with Tory robbing the home run at the All-Star game. It's hard to say that something that happened in an exhibition game was significant in the grand scheme, but as I look back, it's certainly the thing that sticks most in my mind and very representative of baseball at the time, with the involvement of Barry Bonds hitting a home run or nearly hitting a home run. Tory Hunter emerging as a star and just such a likable player across the game. Truly great. And this was the beginning of a very fun run for the Twins, which I think we're all both very excited to cover in the coming episodes. They were not done by any means with their reign in the AL Central after finally managing to overtake it. So thank you for joining us this review of the 2002 season. We will catch you next time when we dive into 2003, Ron Gardenhire's second season in charge of the Twins. They're going to try to repeat as AL Central champs and maybe make it even further in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe they will. We don't know until we discuss it. So appreciate everyone.
Here's the good news. They might even beat the Yankees in the playoffs.
They'll get a chance, I think. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to Twins Daily's podcast and YouTube channels. Check out twinsdaily.com. We'll be adding new segments of episodes regularly as they get created. And we'll see you next time for 2003.